Hey bitches, welcome to my channel. My name is Willow, and today I'm going to be doing the next part in my series where I'm talking about my dream horror movie concept, Killers. Well, as a quick little recap, Killers is a horror movie concept that I created, which features a group of Gen Z characters who battle against mall employees who are the antagonists who are seeking revenge after their pre-holiday plans didn't go as planned. This is going to be an updated version of my sequel, which was Killers 2. There's one small problem though, and that is the fact that I do not have a lot of friends. I believe I can count all of my friends on one hand, definitely on two. Caitlin, Noah, Prim, Nick, Malachi, Josephine, Luna. That's predominantly the people that I talk to, and not even those is like a daily occurrence. And out of my friends, not all of them would be super comfortable being involved in this, so I decided to reuse some of my friends as different characters for this sequel, friends that I know would be comfortable being in this. But I don't think reusing actors is that weird of a thing. I know that American Horror Story does that, and I know Don Mancini has done that with the Chucky franchise several times, and so I'm using some of my friends again. No, this isn't real anyways, so it doesn't really matter, but just if you see the same faces you saw last time, that's why. So let's get started with Killers 2. The first Killers movie concluded after our last surviving protagonist, Nicole, was taken out by our last surviving antagonist, Marissa, who was revealed to be Charlie's mom and behind the whole murder scheme in the first place. This movie starts by showcasing the same scene we left off on in the first movie, which was the bodies of the antagonists laying around the pool, Marissa crying over her daughter who is drowning in the pool, and Nicole who is just stabbed. We see Marissa after she stabbed Nicole going back to the pool to mourn the loss of her daughter, but then is shocked when her daughter, Charlie, wasn't actually dead. Marissa is a bit relieved but also irritated by the fact that her daughter actually lived, but pulls her out of the pool and helps her anyways. Once Charlie catches her breath, she kind of confronts her mother about the whole issue, but Marissa kind of retaliates and says, "I might have killed a lot of your friends, but you killed a lot of mine," which technically is true. I guess you know the saying, you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. I guess this family likes to play around with, you murder my friends, I'll murder yours. Charlie exclaims that she's going to do the right thing and call the cops, and Marissa is kind of against the idea, but she doesn't exactly stop her daughter. She just kind of says, look at the situation we created. It's going to be really hard for the cops to believe anything. But Charlie decides to go ahead and call the cops anyways, which ends up being useless because once the cops get there, they don't really believe anything, and they know Marissa really well, so they kind of just believe Marissa when she says everything's fine. They kind of call for help to get rid of the dead bodies, but they believe her when she just declares it all to be a big accident, and eventually Charlie just goes along with the stories because she realizes it's the easiest thing to do. And if she confesses to the murder, she would end up in jail while her mother would be living the life, so they might as well both just live the life and chalk up all of their friends' deaths to be accidents. But Charlie is obviously still hurt by what happened, and so she decides to move out of her home with Marissa, and she decides to move in with her sister, Chloe. We see Marissa and Charlie both confide in Chloe separately, detailing the events that happened, and we see Chloe sort of take a neutral standpoint. She doesn't really favor Marissa's story or Charlie's story. She just kind of accepts both, and she tries to make peace within the family once again. The movie jumps forward in time a little bit to New Year's Eve, and we see that Charlie has a new job working at a grocery store with a similar vibe to like Walmart or Target, so it's not solely groceries, it's like groceries, clothing, homeware, stuff like that. The store is managed by a woman named Veda. Veda is a cool manager. She cares about the job enough that like she gets by, but she isn't very strict, and it's very apparent that she makes the work environment really, really fun. I based her character off of some of my managers that I had at my McDonald's job. They were so cool. We see some of the other employees goofing off as they're stocking the merchandise, and Charlie doing so properly and solemnly. We can see that Charlie is sort of friends with one of her coworkers named Ronnie, and the two of them are taking more initiative and stocking and doing things properly while the other workers are just more so about having fun. The other workers, the slackers as I call them, are Frankie, which is my character, and Easton, which is Malachi's character. So it's New Year's Eve and Veda is trying to find someone to close down the store with her. Charlie agrees to it because she figures she could use the extra money and all of her friends are dead, so what's she gonna do? Ronnie decides to stay as well, and eventually the slackers decide that they want to stay as well, and they kind of want to just ring in the new year with their coworkers and with Veda. And Veda agrees. She thinks it'll be fun. So they all decide that they're going to close together that night and sort of ring in the new year together and celebrate the new year together. But before they can close down and party, they got a long shift ahead of them and a lot of assholes that they have to deal with. They get several rude encounters where customers are a little bit snarky, but Veda kind of brushes it aside, as well as most of the employees, because they realize that it's a holiday and people are going to be more assholey than other days. But Charlie is very upset very early on because it's really reminiscent to her of what happened at the mall not that long before. The first one is a lady named Eleanor, and Charlie gets the joy of dealing with her directly. Eleanor had a coupon that wouldn't scan and she was getting very annoyed. She really wanted to use this coupon. Charlie immediately jumped in and solved the issue by just using a manager pin that she wasn't supposed to have to promo off the item for it, so the woman got it. This is crucial to show just how much Charlie has changed from the first movie, because she was very strict about rules, and that's sort of what got her into the mess in the first place. In this movie, she obviously changed and is more about survival than actually following the rules, and so she just promos it off in self-preservation. Eleanor smiles and thanks Charlie for helping her and leaves the store peacefully and calmly because she got what she wanted. But the issue left Charlie with a very uneasy feeling. Veda finds out about this and doesn't fully lecture Charlie because she knows that she's traumatized, but kind of reinforces the idea that we can't just give the customers whatever they want. If there's an issue she truly can't deal with, she can talk to Veda, but she can't just go around promoting shit off for the customer. Next encounter is dealt with by Frankie. He was polite, but kind of does the bare minimum he has to with the job. He gets frustrated very easily and has a very little tolerance for bullshit. And if the littlest thing sets him off, he decides to go out and have a smoke break, or he decides to make someone else deal with it because he just will not deal with bullshit. This encounter occurs when Jennifer is looking for a specific type of alcohol which has been sold out because it's New Year's Eve. Jennifer tells Frankie some elaborate story as to why she needs that specific alcohol, and Frankie says, "I'm sorry, but it's not here," and he does offer an alternative that's relatively similar. But Jennifer gets angry and throws the offering on the ground. Frankie is now irritated since he has to clean this up and tries to tell Jennifer that since she broke it, she has to buy it. But Charlie sees this and steps in and begins profusely apologizing to Jennifer, saying another location might have it in stock, but that she really doesn't, and that she's so sorry about the whole situation, and that the customer does not, in fact, have to pay. Frankie is rightfully irritated in this situation, I believe, and decides to go out for a smoke break. Jennifer also obviously stormed out of the store. The next antagonist is handled by Ronnie. As I said, Charlie and Ronnie are the two characters who are mainly focused on their job, and Ronnie is definitely a lot more aggressive with dealing with negative customers, and she demands the rules rather than just explains the rules. So Jill comes in and she claims that she wants to return a defective item. The problem is the box that she brings the item in is very beat up. The item itself is dusty and kind of worn down. The prongs of it are like kind of bent and obviously used. It's like a hairdryer or a curling iron or a fan, something that's electrical that has obviously been used many times. Ronnie says that they can't accept items that have been used that much, but Jill insists, of course, that she just bought it. It doesn't have any proof of purchase. Ronnie suggests a receipt, doesn't have one. She suggests to know which employee sold her the item, pointing out all of the employees at the store, saying that most of them were there yesterday, or even if she doesn't know the name, a vague description of the employee who helped sell her the item. When Charlie overhears this, she obviously tries to mend the situation by going to fetch the new version of the item for Jill, but Ronnie steps up and says, absolutely fucking not, we're not doing this, we're not giving items away for free, causing Jill to be the third customer to leave in a huff. Charlie eventually breaks down and is upset about the abundance of rude customers, is convinced that they are conspiring against her, and Veda eventually decides to let her go home because she's obviously stressed out. So Veda calls Chloe, and Chloe comes to pick up a very distraught Charlie and takes her back to her house. That's where Charlie recounts the events of the day, and to her surprise, Chloe is not very shocked. which of course is a huge red flag, especially considering last time she went to a family member who wasn't very shocked, Mommy ended up being a murderer. But this time Charlie decides against saying anything, figuring maybe everybody is right and maybe it is all coincidental. And so she listens to Chloe reiterate the fact that it's all in her head, because it wouldn't be a horror movie if the main character wasn't gaslighted into believing that everything they've witnessed is wrong. Charlie and her sister hang out for a few hours, while back at the mall we see Veda, Ronnie, and the Slackers deal with a couple more customers. One is a man this time, named Ken, and he has a wife named Mandy, but Mandy isn't an antagonist. Mandy is desperately trying to control her husband and stop him from going on his little rage, but Ken won't. The store employees try and tell him, like, we don't make the prices, we just sell the products. But Ken is just going on a huge rampage about how things were much cheaper in his day and how the prices are ridiculous for everything he wants to buy. And Easton is the one who deals with them. Easton is a really shy character who's kind of awkward around customers. He's obviously a little bit looser with his co-workers. So Easton does try and do the right thing, and he awkwardly points out a few holiday discounts, but Ken, of course, isn't satisfied by that. Ken begins to demand higher discounts and stuff for even having to deal with this in the first place, and eventually Veda intervenes and forces Mandy and Ken to both leave. The last asshole customer isn't a huge asshole, and they're not in the movie a ton, but they are important. And she comes in just a little bit before closing time. This character is Melody, spelled Melodieigh. I really wanted to play into Gen Z's love for clout and doing anything for views, so Melody is a TikTok influencer. Sort of just does things for views, and she's really obnoxious in public because she's trying to rack up the views. I took inspiration here from Seth Shyrock. Most Gen Z movies I find do have annoying references to TikTok to try and be relatable with us, and so I thought I would add that in here. So she starts doing things that are really annoying in public, like riding on a disability scooter when she doesn't need one, rearranging letters in like the craft aisle to spell things she probably shouldn't be spelling, and she's just generally annoying. It kind of ends up pissing all of them off because Ronnie is the first one who approaches her and asks her to leave, but as she's walking out she decides to destruct more things in her path. Eventually Veda tells her to get the fuck out of the store right now and escorts her out. Back at Chloe's house, Charlie fell asleep on the couch after they were watching a movie and wakes up just a little before 10 p.m., which is when their store is set to close. And she sees Chloe heading out the door. She can see Chloe outside kind of talking on the phone with somebody, and she has her car on and warming up and ready to go while she's like standing outside of it talking on the phone. So Charlie decides, spur of the moment, to slip into Chloe's trunk and go wherever she's going. Chloe eventually climbs in and announces to whoever's on the phone that she's on her way and that she's excited. When they stop and Charlie kind of looks out, she realizes that lo and behold, they're at the grocery store. Chloe then opens the trunk and finds Charlie hiding out and is kind of like, what the fuck are you doing here? But Charlie decides to save herself and claim that she wants to help Chloe in whatever she's doing. Chloe accepts the answer and decides maybe they've just decided it's time to mend their family. And then she motions to another car which is pulled in, and Charlie immediately recognizes it as her mom's Subaru. Marissa climbs out and is obviously confused to see Charlie standing there, but Chloe assures her that it's okay and that Charlie is on their side now, and the three have a brief family reunion. While Eleanor, Jill, and Jennifer climb out of Marissa's Subaru. They open the trunk and reveal a plethora of weapons which they grab as they plan to go into the store. They get loaded up with weapons, and someone had an extra knife which they handed off to Charlie. And Marissa explains that she recruited these ladies on a Facebook page of middle-aged women who were tired of dealing with poor treatment at stores. She also explains that all of the antagonists that Charlie saw throughout the day were set as tests to see if they needed to ransack this store. If the employees had reacted how they wanted, which is giving them whatever they want, the antagonists wouldn't have gone on this rampage, but because they didn't, here they are. But Eleanor especially does praise Charlie for being a good employee and giving her what she wanted. Another Subaru pulls up and they're confused because Marissa only Facebook invited those three, and they find out that it is Ken and Mandy. And Ken is there for revenge, completely unaffiliated with the others, but sees them and they kind of ask what's going on and realize that they're all there for revenge, and Ken decides to join their team while he tells Mandy to wait in the car. Easton is the first one to notice the group outside, and he tells Veda, but he also notices Charlie with them. They all instantly recognize those customers as the people that they dealt with throughout the day and are obviously concerned. Veda tells the employees to go to their designated safe area in the store, but they realize that it's America and they don't really have one, so they just kind of have to figure it out and hope they don't die. Now, in the first Killers movie, I made it really easy for them to all have weapons because I put a weaponry store right in the mall, but this time I wanted them to use more unconventional weapons. I know some Walmarts and stuff do sell guns and stuff, but I just really wanted them to focus on a little bit more of unconventional kills. They have things like kitchen knives and stuff, but they generally have to be more inventive. Naturally, of course, Ronnie's first instinct is to call the police, which she does, and she and her coworkers head off to find weapons to use. Well, Veda makes the stupid decision to step outside and confront Chloe because they're kind of friends, and Charlie. Chloe ends up knocking Veda down, which gives Marissa, Jill, Eleanor, Ken, and Jennifer the opportunity to just slip inside the store. Charlie doesn't go in though, but the others don't really notice because they're too dead set on revenge, and Charlie kind of helps Veda, and Veda wakes up eventually and asks Charlie what's going on, and Charlie kind of explains like she just got here and found her sister on this quest for revenge. She explains the Facebook group and all of that, and Veda's like, oh shit, we're fucked. That's when Mandy decides to jump out of the car and ask what's going on, and they kind of retell the events to Mandy as well. And Mandy decides that she's got to step in and stop Ken. The antagonists immediately start their search for the employees and start destroying the store, knocking things down as they can. Any of the big displays, they just push them right down. Like those big displays of like the Coke cases and stuff. Push it down. It doesn't matter what gets damaged. They're having fun. The first person to get injured is Jill because she's running down an aisle where Easton has dumped some like vegetable oil or something slippery in and caused her to trip and fall, but she's not severely injured, just injured enough that she has like a slight limp, and that's just enough to set her off and decide that she wants to follow, track down, and murder Easton herself. The antagonists quickly realize that the employees tried to like Home Alone the shit out of the store and set several traps for them, but now that they're aware, they just know to be extra careful as they try and kill people. Chloe ends up getting into an argument with Veda because the two of them are friends, and Chloe reveals that they were never really friends. Chloe just knew that Veda worked at the store and had a lot of young employees and got the job for her sister as well, so they could sort of watch what goes on in the store. Chloe actually ends up holding a knife to Veda's throat and plans to kill her when Charlie steps in and strangles her own sister with a bag. We then see Ken going after Frankie, but Mandy jogs up behind him and confronts him and asks him what he's doing. Frankie takes the opportunity to slip away, but Ken does kill Mandy by stabbing her. While stumbling away, Frankie ends up noticing some cameras that are like tucked into different aisles and stuff in the store. Ends up bumping into Veda and tells her what he saw. And the two of them end up going back into like a little storeroom where they check the security cameras, and they go back in time and realize that Melody actually left the cameras. And so they end up looking her up on TikTok and find out that she's live streaming this whole thing with her camera feed and placing bets on who's going to survive, having her followers place bets on who's going to survive, and saying that she'll even have a special interview when it's all over with the survivors. And she's playing it up to be this really, really, really huge thing. Which to like, as they're watching her TikTok, they see one of her security cameras and they see Eleanor confronting Ronnie for being such a rule follower. Ronnie kind of freezes up and pulls a kitchen knife on Eleanor, mocks the very thought of it, and just slams a box over Ronnie's head, like a big heavy box, and ends up severely injuring Ronnie. But while Eleanor is sauntering away in her heels, Ronnie kind of rolls over, grabs her, causes her to fall, and then takes the heavy box and slams it over Eleanor's head herself. However, Ronnie was kind of smug thanks to her defeat of Eleanor and ends up getting killed by Ken by having her head slammed against one of the glass freezer doors repeatedly. Jill continues to chase Easton around, but Easton lets loose a bunch of big bounty balls from the thing, which obviously kind of diverts Jill's attention, makes her stumble as all these giant balls are coming towards her. Veda decides they should help the others and leave the stock room, but Frankie stays in there for a little bit because why wouldn't he? Frankie does see Jennifer on the security monitor though, which is who he dealt with and who pissed him off, so he insists that he'll be just a moment. Veda shrugs it off and leaves the storeroom and gets excited to hear police sirens outside. And she starts running for the door, but she's stopped by Ken. He catches her and tells her to say that it was a prank call by her employees on New Year's Eve, or that he'll kill her right then. Veda realizes she wouldn't be very useful if she was dead, so she goes outside with Ken, profusely apologizes to the police officer, says it's New Year's Eve, her employees were messing around and called as a joke, and that everything's fine. The police believe it because Why wouldn't they? She does try and signal to the cops that Ken is dangerous, but they don't really get what she's trying to do. And so he sends them on their way back inside. Catching up with Frankie, he decides to finally come up behind Jennifer, who is helping herself to some of the drinks in the alcohol aisle. Frankie sweetly apologizes, holding up a bottle of the alcohol that she wanted earlier. He says he actually did find some in the back, and he apologizes, saying it was all his fault. Jennifer starts going on this rant about how Frankie should have just checked in the back in the first place, and how if he did, they wouldn't be in this situation right now. And Frankie apologizes and goes to hand her the bottle. However, he stops just a little in front of her, drops the bottle on the floor, lets it shatter, obviously breaks and spills. Frankie apologizes to Jennifer, who just kind of stands there like, what are you doing? And Frankie then starts to walk away, but then takes a lighter out of his pocket. He lights a cigarette in his mouth and walks up to the nervous Jennifer, dropping the cigarette right in the alcohol, causing an explosion, which kills both of them. Now, I don't think that this one is 100% realistic, but if that stupid teacher in Final Destination can die by vodka, this can work in this, okay? Playing field is now even, as we have 3 protagonists and 3 antagonists. Jill, Marissa, and Ken versus Easton, Charlie, and Veda. We finally get to a point where Charlie gets to see her mom, and they get to confront each other, and Charlie gets to give her heroic "it doesn't have to be this way" speech. Marissa insists that she just wants to be a family again, and Charlie agrees, embracing her mom. It's a really heartfelt moment. But it's not too sweet, because then, during the hug, Marissa stabs Charlie in the back, and starts sobbing because she realizes both of her children are dead, and there's a moment in silence where all the characters stop what they're doing. The fighting is then restarted when Easton gets his heroic moment of courage and decides he wants to avenge his friends. He sets up a little trap of nails on the floor which is intended to kill Jill. However, Jill is wearing thick heels and easily just trampled the nails, not getting injured really at all. Instead of getting killed, does the killing herself. She pushes Easton to the ground and stomps him with her heels. Veda is now severely outnumbered by the antagonists. She's able to momentarily talk herself down by telling Marissa that she's friends with Chloe, or was friends with Chloe. She starts explaining to Marissa that she's the one who gave them access to the store. She's the one who asked all these employees to close down the store specifically so they'd be there to be killed. And she basically has this whole story told to Marissa that she was conspiring with Chloe to help the situation, and Chloe obviously can't deny the story because Chloe is dead. The antagonists decide to revel in their defeat, and they decide to have a little New Year's party there anyways. Time for a fresh new start. Ken, being the only man, decides that he wants to kiss a girl for New Year's, a little midnight kiss, and he naturally decides that he wants to kiss the youngest person there, which is Veda. Veda agrees to this and says that when the clock strikes midnight, she'll kiss him. Ben is excited because he thinks he's gonna get some action. And Veda steps away to freshen up because she is covered in a little bit of blood and dirt and stuff. She comes back just a little before midnight in a dress that she'd grabbed from the store and puckers up in the final 10 seconds. They're counting down, but instead of getting a kiss, he gets hit by a brick. Jill and Marissa were stunned, but they weren't completely mad because even they had to admit that Ken was an asshole and he wasn't invited to be a part of their scheme in the first place. And so they kind of just let it slide, and they decide that men are never to be a part of their schemes ever again because that was a disaster. And they said they wish that they would have just killed Ken too. The 3 of them just kind of stand there unsure of what else to do. They still believe Veda is kind of a part of this. They decide to just go home. They already went big, so I guess now it's time to go home, right? They head outside, but just as they do, Marissa feels something grabbing her from behind. Charlie! You didn't think Charlie would actually die right then, did you? She's weak, but attempts to strangle Marissa. They stumble out into the crosswalk, which is empty because everyone's celebrating the New Year's, and everything is closed, and they're kind of just like tussling until a car comes through and hits both of them. Charlie doesn't quite die, so the car backs over her again. She's actually dead this time. Jill and Veda just kind of stand there shocked because Melody is the one who did it. She said that we can't have that ending, kind of like in the Hunger Games, how when they were both just gonna eat the fucking berries, they stopped it. Well, she wasn't very happy with that ending, and she wanted someone to prevail. Melody pulls out a gun and insists that this show was gonna end now. Melody opts for shooting Veda. Jill is kind of shocked and maybe even a little remorseful, but Melody just sits beside her on a curb. They smoke some cigarettes or something, watching the New Year's fireworks that are going on in the town around them, and the screen fades to black. And that is all for Killers 2. I know it's kind of a weird concept and it's kind of similar to the first one, but That's kind of the point. And it definitely explored a little bit more of creative kills and was a little different, and we did get to bring Charlie and Marissa back to have them ultimately meet their match. Or did they? You never know. Sometimes you just can't keep a final girl down. I guess we'll have to stick around for Killers 3 to find out what happens. That is all for this video, and I will see you guys in my next. Peace out.